You can drive your hybrid, 90% of hybrids. You can have LED bulbs. You can have green economy as far as you want. But if Africa doesn't, you are kidding yourself.
Today's guest is Kaddu Sebunya, a leading voice in African conservation and the CEO of the African Wildlife Foundation. Kaddu has spent over 2 decades redefining what conservation means, not just for Africa, but for the world. He's a strong advocate for Africa's role in global sustainability and never shies away from bold, controversial truths.
This is Conversation Changers, brought to you by Salzburg Global.
Kaddu, welcome to Conversation Changers.
Thank you for having me.
You have been in wildlife protection for a number of years now. And one thing that I picked up is that you have been talking about this people-centered approach to wildlife protection. And, I thought it's about wildlife. Why does he talk about people? How does that go together?
No, this is coming from how conservation has been done on the continent for a very long time, and the results we've got from the approaches, which has been historically from a colonial era. And then the Africans took over the central governments and continued with the same approaches of protecting wildlife from Africans. And that hasn't given us the results we want for many, many years. That approach has been effective in really protecting wildlife, but it hasn't been successful in sustaining wildlife. And data is not on the side of success. I mean, for in my lifetime, I'm 60. In my lifetime, we've lost half the population of elephants. We've wiped out more than half the population of lions. And the rhinos are extinct in many of the countries, not because we have not been carrying out conservation, but the approach has been decreasing the value of wildlife to Africans and increasing the connection and emotions to non-Africans who come for tourism on the continent. And that hasn't succeeded because Africans have completely checked out. They have outsourced their primary responsibility of protecting, managing, and benefiting from the heritage.
Oh, that is super interesting. So your approach is you have to bring them back into the game.
You have to bring back in the game, and it's possible. And where we have done that at a project level, we've been extremely, extremely successful. The challenge now we have is how do you scale that up? And it's possible. It's really focusing on how do you deal with people that value a chicken more than a leopard.
Sure.
And a chicken, pays school fees. A goat pays healthy bills, And if you have a cow, you can even marry. So with a leopard,
what can you do?
What can you do? It doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
You have an association apart from your traditional clan, which is affiliation of the leopard, but it belongs to central government, and that has been translated into national parks belong to everybody, but no one. We have right now a case in Malawi where communities have mobilized and suing an NGO, an international NGO, because it reintroduced the elephants, and elephants are killing people, raiding crops, and destroying their homes. And they're saying, you should be responsible. So we are seeing those kind of cases. And the kids in Botswana, the conversation they have about elephants is when the parents sit on a dinner table and say, you can't go back to school.
Because?
Because the elephants raided the corn farm.
So we can't afford
all the maize is gone, and we can't afford your school fees. Or you can't go back to school this term because harvest is here. You're going to spend the next 2 months in a garden chasing elephants from the crops. So you can't go back to school. Those are the conversations. The hyenas have taken all the goats, killed all the goats last night. So we can't pay your mother's fees or medical bills. Those are the conversations African kids who live near elephants hear every day. So the idea that you hear the conversations in Europe and North America. Oh, but why can't Africans? Why don't they like animals? I think it's common sense. Why, the elephants are so beautiful. Elephants are dangerous. A lot of conservation work has happened on the continent. Has not been focused on people to be able to live with wildlife. We have been focusing on how we can increase the number of wildlife. But who live with them? Who live the increased number of lions, increased number of leopards? They eat people. Increased number of elephants. So you hear us in conservation celebrating. So how's the work going? Oh, we've increased the number of lions. As an indicator, we've increased the number of elephants, and donors in Europe and North America are giving us money. So the approach is really must be, how do we build a livelihood, an economy that builds a relationship and increases value to the people who pay the cost of conservation? We cannot continue protecting these islands away from the people's livelihoods. So the more we support people and build their economies that tie into sustainability of wildlife and its habitats, that's where the answer is. That's why the focus should be on people. After all, animals are wild. They don't need our human attention. They're wild.
The name wildlife kind of gives it away.
The idea that you're going to spend money protecting spending it on a wild animal, I don't know who came up with that idea. We should be spending our effort and money and time to support people on how they can live with these wild animals.
I saw, for me, a beautiful example when I traveled with my family to Rwanda after Kenya. Yeah. And we wanted to see the mountain gorillas, which, again, for us is a romantic notion. It's an amazing animal and it lives there. And what we saw is that a lot of people were brought into that program because the guides, of course, they are all from the neighborhood. Yeah. They know the mountain inside out. Yeah. And then they told us, look, some of them used to be poachers. Yeah. But we wanted to bring them in, and now they are making money. Now they see how protecting so now this is now how the whole system. So it seemed like it really works out.
We've been working in Rwanda for more than 4 years in different aspects. We ran the park during the civil wars in Rwanda. Government formed. We left the management of the park. We dealt with tourism. And one of the smart things we did was centering people in the middle of the tourism industry. Okay. The first product we did in Rwanda in tourism was to build a community lodge, lodge. It was the first high-end lodge in the country. You spend $1,800 to stay a night, but the lodge is owned by the people. Okay. So all we did was to organize people into a corporate, ask government to give them the land, and we built a lodge. But because it's a high-end lodge, they can't service the customers. So we flipped the whole entire industry. Instead of bringing in high-end operators to own a lodge in the park, we said, no, the people own the lodge, you run it. So this is a community lodge, high-end, run by a very high-end tour operator. And for the last 30 years, it's been pumping more than $500,000 annually into that rural economy. And guess what? No mountain gorilla has been killed.
Yeah, well, this is perfect. And also, if it weren't like that, I could easily see how the local population says, well, look, there come the rich foreigners. I have nothing from it, but they live the rich life. So damn them, right? If you're not in the game, then...
No, they have to benefit. They have to see the benefit. And not everybody, because the conversation has to be how this habitat supports them. Science is on our side,
right?
We are right now we are working with the government of Rwanda to expand the park because we are having a good problem, if there is anything like that.
Right.
That population,
more people coming.
The population numbers of mountain gorillas is increasing because of the success in conservation. They're killing themselves because they're territorial. So the park has to expand.
Right.
But this area has the most human dense population in Africa.
Okay.
So how do you balance that? And what we've decided to do, with the government, not to buy land from poor people and expand the park, which is a model most NGOs do. That no, we are going to work with the people centering, focus on their livelihoods and provide them an economy that they can bear to live with wildlife and expand the park. This idea of protectionism hasn't given us the results we want. Besides that, it's too expensive. Protectionism approach where you need rangers with guns, young boys, training them as rangers with guns. Now they are protecting rhinos 24 hours. We are using night goggles. We are using helicopters. We are using high value vehicles to patrol these parks. How does that end? It's becoming too expensive. But with the mountain areas in Rwanda and some of the areas we want, the price of managing these areas go down. You don't need more rangers because the communities are patrolling.
It seems like such a smart approach. And I love this idea that you really bring humans in the center, because at the end of the day, I mean, for our politics, for all politics, right? Humans have to be at the center. I mean, as much as we love animals and the animals profit greatly from it.
Yeah.
But it has to be a win-win.
No, you've talked about politics. My job, I meet a number of African presidents. And one of them told me, Kaddu, what you are saying is absolutely right. We need to take care of our heritage. We need to deal with animals. We need to manage our parks better. Who can disagree with that? But guess what? I've never met a voter who is asking for more elephants or more protected areas. They're asking for jobs. They're asking for better economy. They're asking for better education, health services. How can conservation help me achieve that for my people?
Right.
So unless
you have an answer for that,
forget it. So unless conservation or wildlife is centered on Africa's economies, or supports their aspirations, or led by them, and the good news is that science is on our side to prove that. The economies are on our side to prove that you are not going to be successful with agriculture without conservation.
Yes, so you win on all fronts.
You win on all fronts. If we have an alternative conversation other than focus on these animals are beautiful. And therefore, our work is to protect them as an end in itself.
Well, for Salzburg Global, our message is change the conversation. So you have an alternative conversation that you're working on.
So governments respond to people. And we've done some work. As Africa democratizes, which is going on right now, majority of countries, Africa has 55 countries, 53 countries have electoral politics. It's not yet perfect, but it's electoral politics.
Right.
So it's the voters. So if
as it should be,
if majority of Africans think that conservation is for foreigners, I'm not benefiting, they're not going to support governments. That, in fact, I know areas where we work that you can't win elections unless you promise people to degazette a park, give them land, give the land of a park for agriculture. That's when they will vote you. So as Africa democratizes, conservation is going to suffer unless we center it as part of Africa's development. But that voice has to be African.
Well, as they always say, all politics are local.
Absolutely. Until Africans increasingly hear from other Africans why elephants are important, and not from Hollywood.
Yeah.
And not from rich Europeans or North Americans. They've done a good job. Perhaps we would have lost a lot of wildlife if there was no international NGOs or researchers from abroad. But we can't continue seeing Discovery Channel, National Geographic, and all these channels telling us wildlife is important to you. And they don't see African voices. But they're there. I've just told you, 90% of my staff are Africans. These are PhD scientists and ecologists and social anthropologists doing these things. You don't see that on TV, and we're investing in that.
Oh, you said that there are philanthropists who support your organization. I would imagine that a number of those philanthropists come from abroad. I would assume from the United States, because philanthropy is so big in the United States.
That's correct. Okay, yeah. Almost 35% of philanthropists support to our NGOs from the United States of America.
Right.
And that's okay.
Sure.
But because we need to do some work in Africa.
Yeah.
People think that Africa are not anthropologists. I don't know in Africa who's not. I don't know in Africa who is not paying school fees for their cousin or aunties or nephews, or who is not paying healthy for their relatives, their aunties, or who is not paying for burial fees for anyone else, or who is not building a school. Africa would not exist if there are no African philanthropists doing this work. So they are, but tell them to give money for health funds.
That's very low down.
Are you kidding me? So yes, we are getting philanthropists, donors from the United States. We want to increase philanthropists from Europe for a simple reason. While wildlife in Africa, 30% of global biodiversity is found on the African continent.
Okay.
3/4 of fresh water is on that continent.
Yeah.
While this primary responsibility is to Africans, they belong to the entire world.
Yeah.
Africans are the custodians.
Well, but that means also that I think you have to educate the philanthropists.
Absolutely.
You have to steer them and say, look,
Absolutely.
we love your support, but let me tell you what works.
That has been my message to all philanthropists, that don't give me money for rhinos,
Yeah.
but give me money for Africans to be able to protect rhinos.
Yeah.
And that is the key. So fund some of our programs and mission and approaches so that Africans can do the work. Nobody can. We've failed when Africans are not. I gave you data. Now giraffes. This is the last mammal, tallest mammal in the world. Is threatened now. We've included it on the high threat list.
Really?
For giraffes. Why? Because Africans, there's a lot of money. There are a lot of NGOs that are focused on giraffe.
Yeah.
The number is going down.
Sure, it's a cute animal, right? You have to love a giraffe just the way it looks.
But you gotta focus on Africans and find a ways of getting Africans to protect the giraffe. Otherwise, it will be extinct. And especially young Africans, 70% of the continent is young. It's the youngest continent. By 2050, 4 out of 10 people in this world are going to be African.
Well, tell me there, because now, just for the end of our conversation, just to take the eagle view, and you've touched upon it now with the demographics. While Europe is becoming a very old continent, if we look to Asia, we see countries that are aging. Africa is a very young continent. So youth, of course, is a great story, and youth surely has opportunity.
Yeah.
But youth also has risk, right?
Yes, yeah.
Because if I'm young and I don't see any way that I can be successful in my society, then what am I doing? Yeah. So how do you see, where is Africa moving? So the youth is there, but do the opportunities come along at the same time?
Africa is currently finding ourselves at a crossroad. We are making decisions for the continent that are going to change this planet because of these young people. There are opportunities, there are risks and challenges. The biggest opportunity is that Africa has never had an educated population than these young people today. They are the most educated Africans that have ever lived on this planet.
Yeah.
They're the most exposed. They are the most risk takers. And they're the most united. They're more African than any African.
Is that so? Is a young African feel African?
Oh yeah, they're cross-boundary. They don't care about borders. They don't care where they come from. They're Africans.
Okay.
So that is changing. It's a game changer for the continent. But also they are disruptors. They are asking the right questions. I live in Nairobi. We saw what happened when the government came up with a finance bill and the young people are saying, we don't like it. They went on the streets and the government pulled down. They said, we're going to change it. They listened. They are going to change the continent. They're more ambitious. They're more global.
Yeah.
They're led by people who have diaspora sometimes, Many of these kids have studied in top universities in Europe and North America, and they've gone back to the continent.
Right.
I'm very, very optimistic with these young people. But we need to do certain things. We need to sort out corruption. We need to sort out governance issues. And we are led by old men. All these things needs to change on the continent, but it's starting. We are more united. Africa now is led by African institutions. The African Union is taking a lead. They have an office in Brussels that are dealing with the European Union. They have an office in Washington, D.C. That's a voice of Africa. So increasingly, we are approaching the international stage as a continent, as a country.
Yeah.
And that is a game changer. So as this conversation of Africanism increases, Pan-Africanism, we are going to manage these resources better.
Sure.
Because no country is going to be successful in managing wildlife alone without its neighbor. And no continent, that also is continental. Europe, you can drive your hybrid, 90% of hybrids. You can have LED bulbs. You can have green economy as far as you want. But if Africa doesn't, you are kidding yourself.
Yeah.
You are not going to solve the climate issue alone. The solution for our global climate challenge is in Africa. But I think that reality is going to come from young Europeans, how they can work with the young Africans. We are neighbors. So culturally, we are connected.
Yeah.
You know what the largest French-speaking city? Kinshasa,
Yeah.
not Paris.
Funny.
The largest English-speaking city in the next 10 years is Lagos, not London, not New York.
I love those arguments. And, those are numbers I think that many people will overlook. But I think you have 100%, you're 100% correct. And now in an age where we're talking about, onshoring, reshoring, and all our products come from Asia, halfway around the globe, while Africa is right in front of our doorsteps. How does that, it seems so totally illogical.
It's logical, but here is the opportunity for Europe. 70% of the financial need for Africa's development plan is not in Africa. It's outside Africa. There is opportunity to make money, just financing development in Africa. China is doing that at a very, very bad deals. The debt to Africa and China. But you can do it better.
And that's,
technology. The technology Africa needs and the world needs to leapfrog Africa into green economies is not on the continent. So if I was a university in Europe, if it was a tech company in Europe, there are opportunities.
Yeah.
Almost a third of the most important minerals for the world are in Africa. What an opportunity.
So the message is actually really, let's make money together, because it should be easily possible.
It's not aid. Aid hasn't worked. And aid has historically, you look at any aid packages apart from the Marshall Plan for Europe.
Yeah.
It hasn't worked except the Marshall Plan, since the Marshall Plan. So aid has not built, even it hasn't proved useful to the giver and taker. It hasn't built better relationship. Because Africa has received more aid than any other continent. I don't think it has very excellent relationship with any country that has been giving aid. No, aid hasn't worked.
Right.
But the trade, anybody who has traded with the continent has better relationship with the continent more than someone who has given aid. So it's the trade Africa needs, and it's really the technological transfer. It's the financial transfer. It's the skills. You have a youth population.
Right.
It's the skills you're going to transfer for the good of Europe, not Africa.
Let me touch on the last thing, because I said it before. At Salzburg Global, one of our mantras is, if you will, change the conversation. Because it basically what we mean is sometimes you have to look at things from a different angle. It'll help you look at it from a different angle. So if you were to change the conversation, which conversation would you rather have? Which angle would you rather look at things from?
I think it's going to start from the history. I think it's the mindset we need to change. I think the conversation has to start to the responsibility the world has to Africa. Perhaps it starts from we are all Africans.
Historically, right?
Historically. So I think that change the conversation is how will you live or your grandchildren live? Can they survive on this planet without Africa? Science tells us that the answer is no. So the conversation is going to change when everybody, especially Europeans, ask themselves that very simple question. If I want to leave Europe to my great-great-grandchildren, can I do that without Africa? Everything we've looked at, the answer is no. And therefore, what can I do to bring Africa closer so that my great-grandchildren can take advantage of the opportunities that Africa has for Europeans?
That's what I love, that we have a different take on the conversation. And what I would like to end with here is that when I was in Africa, I had a lot of conversations where I saw people very optimistic, and you said it earlier in this talk. And just yesterday, I had a conversation with someone from South Africa, and he said, when I look at the world is upside down, many problems, but I don't feel more optimistic about any part in the world than I do feel about Africa. We conclude the talk on optimism and opportunity, and I think we need both of it to make the future work for all of us together. Kaddu, thank you very much for this conversation. It was a pleasure. Great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Martin.
In an age of polarized voices and reinforced views, be part of changing the conversation. Follow us on social media and visit us at salzburgglobal.org.